Hello and welcome to The Actor and the Engineer. My name is Paul James. I am the actor.
And my name's Josh Knapp. I'm the broadcast engineer.
Here we go, Josh.
All right. So today we're talking about American fiction. It's Cord Jefferson's new film. Writer-director Cord Jefferson. Had you heard his name or did you know anything about him before this? Okay. Well,
no, but I love his name. I want to be called Cord.
It is a cool name.
Yeah,
this guy
cool
has been in and around a lot of stuff that we've talked about.
I did not know his name, but then when I looked at his bio, I went, oh wow, I love that episode of Succession.
Yes.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah.
He's been a big writer on different TV shows, whether it's The Good Place, Succession, Master of None, the Watchmen. I think he won a Grammy, or not Grammy. I think he won an Emmy. Oh,
Turn
Emmys?
Around and look. You have two. You should be remembering what they're called.
Yeah, he won one of those guys for an episode of the HBO Watchmen. So yeah, that's really cool. And so this is his first movie that he's ever written and his first movie that he's ever directed. So I mean I'm excited to see what he does going forward. So probably doesn't hurt that this movie stars Jeffrey Wright, Sterling K. Brown, Tracy Ellis Ross, and Leslie Uggams. I mean, it's definitely a stacked cast, but I think that my guess is that the things that attracted these people to this is his writing. So the movie is nominated for Best Picture, Best Screenplay, a bunch of other stuff.
Supporting actor.
Score too, which was fine. I mean, it didn't jump out at me, but maybe that's a good thing in a movie like this where the writing and the performances are, front and center. So it's about a novelist who's isn't able to sell his books, and so he ends up writing a book that is what is the opposite of what he thinks he should be writing. It ends up getting very popular, and he has to deal with the kind of the lie that is his writing of the book, and there's a bunch of other stuff that goes on in this movie. That's how the movie is sold. That is not what this movie is about. So that's the part that I love the most about this movie.
Everything about it is subversive. Everything about your idea of what it's going to be is subversive. It is not. It is what they, excuse me, frog in my throat. It is what they described it, but it's so much more, and it's so much more than what we're not expecting it to be, and that I love about it. And let's start with the score, because also, by the way, Sterling K. Brown was nominated for Best Supporting Actor, and Jeffrey Wright was nominated for Best Actor, both well-deserved. Mm-hmm. Here's what I think is interesting about the score. The score has to be 10, 12 different things in that movie, and yet they run, I believe it's Laura Cartman. Yes, Laura. She runs the same melody through things that remind you of the score of the movie, yet there's a sad scene on the beach, which I was not expecting the movie to open the way that it opened, and I wasn't expecting to be there immediately. I thought that would come later on, maybe Act 3. I knew it was coming because I know these actors and I know what they're capable of, and I knew that they would put them in situations where that would happen. I just didn't know it was going to be the first 15 minutes of the movie. I was not ready for that. Yeah. And then she has to make up imaginary movie scores, imaginary literature scores when he's talking at the TV show. There's a whole bunch of things she has to do that maybe the whole idea of a score isn't a through line, that it's a bunch of different things with one through line going through it. And I like that. I thought that was great. And the fact that I noticed it and you didn't is strange, because that's usually the opposite. And I'm just happy that somebody who's written a movie first time is 5 nominations out of the gate, and her being one of them. So that just allows me to know that when these people walk into a room and they want a certain amount of money for the next feature, and the exec is like, who is it? His first film was nominated for 5 Oscars. Oh, let him in. Like, unfortunately, that's the game they're playing, and that's the game that they're living in. But I think they're all deserving of it. So I like the score. I thought it was interesting.
Yeah, and I think that going back to kind of like what you were saying, like getting his foot in the door. It seems like I've listened to some interviews with him and just kind of how he got the movie made. And it seems like he got a lot of good response, but then nobody was willing to actually put their money where their mouth was, even though this was not, he said it was less than $10 million. Like the budget was less than $10 million, which is just like nothing. Essentially a rounding error for a Marvel movie. So it's one of those things where it's like, what's the real risk in making this movie? There's really not that much of a monetary risk. It's just whether they want to like spend the energy to get it up on its feet and to give it the small, quote unquote, small amount of money compared to all these other big movies. Because this movie's not like, there's no huge, there's the one kind of hook of in the trailer of like, this is a guy who gets too deep into something and doesn't know how to kind of get out of it. But he's also, it also has the satirical side of things. And I think that one of the quotes that he had in one of the interviews that he was actually had an interview with Michael Schur, which was a decent interview, although Michael Schur, the creator of The Good Place and writer on The Office, and he made a bunch of other TV shows too, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, that kind of stuff. So he talks way too much. But anyway, so what Cord Jefferson was saying is that, he wanted this movie to have the right amount of satire and not bend into being farcical. And so I think that is kind of the perfect way to distill it. And they were talking about tone, and we talk about tone all the time. And I think that this does a really good job of, yes, having funny parts, and yes, having touching parts, and yes, having really deep conversations, but then also not taking itself way too seriously either. So that's the kind of like balance in tone that I love in movies that is really, really hard to nail. And I mean, I think Coen brothers are really good at that. As far as like comedic type thing, like this has a lot of comedy and one of the scenes, I'm not going to get too deep into spoilers, but one of the scenes is on the beach and does involve an urn and does involve things like that. And it reminded me of Big Lebowski and that kind of stuff, but where it's supposed to be a touching scene. In The Big Lebowski, it's more comedy than drama. But at that point in the movie, we don't really know exactly where this movie's going to land tone wise. And so it makes you wonder, like, are you going to lean way more into drama or way more into comedy? And it kind of like reels you in one way or the other. Like once it gets too serious, it kind of like brings in an Adam Brody character, who's the like douchey screenwriter in this movie. And just looking at him, you're just like, you just did roll your eyes and you're
the
just
hair. How
yeah,
it's like
all
just
of it, the
little,
greasiness, like, oh yeah, the guy is just
pants and those shirts and those shoes. It's like,
the loafers or whatever he was.
Yeah,
it's just like this guy is, he's oh gosh.
He's good though. If you think about Adam Brody's career, he's good. Think about him from Promising Young Woman and then Shazam. I mean, and now this, he's got a thing.
Well, he always plays those Mr. and Mrs. Smith. He plays like the dorky, the dorky guy who's like he gets kidnapped or whatever. So, I mean, he does play the like douche dork really well.
Although he played a really nice guy in the Gilmore Girls. So what's the word I'm looking for? I guess taste in my mouth when it comes to him is a sweet, gentle man who literally just wants to go out with this young, well, they're both the same age. Let me clarify that. They're both high school, college age. And she comes from a very reserved and very strict upbringing. And so the way he has to bounce around, and he's fine with all of it. And the way he's gentle and the way he's kind, that's what's in my mind. So when he plays these characters, I'm like, he's good, because I don't like that guy, but I like this guy. So
it's like he knows what to lean into. It sounds
he does. He does. I think he's smart.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I mean, so this movie, I part of me doesn't want to like give away too much to people who haven't seen it, but I do want to iterate that it's a great movie to see. in the theater because it's an engaging movie, and you're locked in, and it forces you to actually think about some of the concepts in the film that get brought up, and it also keeps you contained in this story throughout the film. Whereas if you were able to pause it and that kind of stuff, I think that you might not, at least for me, I might not remember what happened at the beginning compared to what happened at the end. And there's a lot of things that they get connected with the characters, and with especially what the Jeffrey Wright character Monk Ellis goes through. So I think it's really cool and fun to see in the theater. But I do think going forward, we should probably talk about spoilers.
Well, there's really only one major one, and then there's a few things at the end that could be giveaways. But yeah, I mean, they did a very good job. I read a bunch of reviews because sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. We've talked about that before. I just wanted to feel what the general consensus of this movie was, because I was lit up when I walked out of the film. It's one of the best of the year. I'm glad it's being celebrated. I'm glad that people are going to see it. I'm glad that it's still in the theater. I'm glad that there's 5 showings or 4 showings, which is a lot for a movie that's been in, a small budgeted movie that's been in the theaters for a while. Usually it goes down to 3 and then 2 and then 8:00 at Southside, which is 35 minutes away, but it's still showing. So I'm glad about that. I found it interesting how they bounced around the opening spoiler. They just simply called it a family tragedy, and I think that's fine. I think that people who've seen the film will know what we're talking about, and we could talk about it and reference it without it being too spoilerish. And this is coming from me. Well, I am Mr. Spoiler.
Well, I think that I think the big thing that I recognized very early on is that this is kind of a Trojan horse movie, where it got me into the theater because the concept and the cynicism that he had with his, how he wanted to deal with the populist, what people want in a book, and he's like, oh, I'll write what people want in a book and show them that it's stupid. I'm going to take it to the extreme. I'm going to take it so far that nobody's going to want that people are going to recognize how they're going to recognize how bad the ones that aren't as extreme as this are, and then it'll be a reckoning for people. But it wasn't. He took it to an extreme, and people ate it up even more. But really, ultimately, the film is about a family, and we get to see that very early on, and then you kind of it reveals itself fairly quickly. You have to get the character into a situation where he's forced into selling that book. And I think that was the kind of linchpin of probably the book, but also the movie, where it's like, why would he say yes? Like, somebody wants to buy it, but why would he say yes? His principles wouldn't allow him to sell that book. So there's got to be some impetus, some driving force that forces him to say yes, and that all comes to head in the movie, and so that allows you to buy in logically to the film, whereas you may just in another movie you might just be like, oh yeah, this is funny. I think let's just take this to its absurdist conclusion. But in this movie you didn't have to, because there was that undergirding of a family drama that and every character was really well written and well rounded. Like, everybody in the movie had their own things going on, and you felt like you could just focus in on one of those people for a while and get something good out of it. Whereas characters weren't hanging on to the edge of the Jeffrey Wright character and just being things for him to bounce off of. They were equals to him. So I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, I think that's going to come up a little bit later with my minor little issue with this film. It's just it's minor, and it's probably me personalizing it, but I do have some minor issues with a way a character is written, but we'll talk about that in just a little bit. And that's why I was saying, did you want to say something?
Mm-mm.
Okay. That's why I was saying it's subversive, because what this film does is it keys you into the obvious thing that this writer has a problem with, the way that people see Black culture in literature. And that's the obvious problem. But what the film does is it allows you to see a family that you traditionally don't see on film. Upper middle class, Cape Cod, beach going, beach house, doctors. All three of them
Everybody's
are doctors.
a doctor except for him. His dad was a doctor.
Yeah, I mean, and he's not technically unsuccessful. He's just not as successful as he needs to be to rectify this situation that is thrown at him through life and the aging process and so forth and so on. And so now with movies like this, I hope we move towards, and we are moving towards, movies about middle-class African-American families that are about that family and doesn't need this little, like, not little, I can't say it's little, it's big. Mm-hmm. It's a great idea. It doesn't need this satirical idea that let's hold a mirror up to what you think we are on film, what Black people are on film. Let's talk about them as a family and the family drama and the issues that are with the family. Because if it was a white family, no one would question that this family is doing what they're doing. And no one questions it in this movie. And that's what I think is the brilliance. You are worried about them as human beings.
Yeah.
And this other thing happens to be an educational tool. That's what I thought of it as. It's an educational tool. It's a great way to educate people who don't understand there are issues with the way that the Black culture or Black people are presented on film. And I'm speaking in according to this film, okay? Not from an idea of me being a film goer or me being a film watcher or me being any kind of film aficionado. It shines a light on it in a humorous way, and it teaches people this is what we're talking about. And if you pound that over people's heads, they get defensive. If you tell people that they're racist because this is what you're putting your money towards, they get defensive. We've actually talked about this off podcast with a couple other subjects of the world we live in. And you had said to me, you can never tell somebody that they're something that you think they are, in particular racist, because that shuts them off and it makes them defensive. This is a fantastic way to say, hey, look, this is going on. You need to look at it. We can laugh at it. We can laugh with it. We can laugh with these people, but this is a serious thing. And let me take this tonally interesting film and show it to you without making you feel bad, without making you feel defensive. Mm-hmm. And it opens people's eyes and educates people without trying to hurt their feelings while you're doing it and trying to make them pay, what's the word I'm looking for? Some kind of reparation for, and I'm using that term in particular, for all of the past sins of Hollywood. Mm-hmm. But the film's also saying, we've got to stop doing this because you're not doing anything. You're not acknowledging it. You're not saying it exists. You're not paying reparations for it. You're not doing anything. You're continuously going through this cycle. So in a way, it's so brilliant how the film is an educational tool, because there's a lot of people out there who don't even, why would they? If that wasn't their life, I mean, it's kind of hard pressed not to believe that people can't see it, because we're living in the world we're living in and people are screaming it 9 to 5 every day. But something about the tonal way that the director handles the movie, and then in particular, Jeffrey Wright's every man's performance, everyday guy performance, it's almost like The Holdovers. It's almost like an Alexander Payne film. It's almost like Paul Giamatti and Jeffrey Wright are somewhat playing the same character on some level. And there is a charismatic quality that Jeffrey Wright brings to every performance that I've ever seen him in. And I, all the way back to Angels in America on HBO, which he originally won the Tony for on Broadway. And then I believe he won the Emmy also for part 2. I'm not sure. I'd have to look that up. But because he is not judging us as an audience member, we are not judging them as film goers. And I think that's an important thing that's happening here. Does that make sense? Did I make sense?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that you're right in the fact that this is a family that you wouldn't normally see. Like, if it was just the family drama movie, they make those about white families. They have made those about
Right.
white family. Rachel getting married, or I mean,
Which
there's wasn't the Family Stone? Wasn't that one of those?
It's a Christmas movie. I love that movie too.
Yeah, but it was like, I mean, but it's just like family drama. That one you like with Jason Bateman and Corey Stoll.
I just watched all of these movies. This is where I leave you. This is where I leave you. I just saw Corey Stoll on Broadway.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, you just got back from that.
He was fantastic.
Oh, wow.
He was fantastic.
Really?
Yeah, he's giant too. Like I was like, he is a force. He is not a small person. So when he comes out, you're like, okay, I'm listening. Okay, Yellow Jacket, I'm listening. But anyway, yes, all of those movies. Yeah, right. MODOK, yeah. I forgot about that. I'm so glad.
Talk about massive. Like, that's a massive head.
So glad I didn't remember that during that performance. But yes, this is where I leave you. Yes, all family dramas, all examples of those are all perfect examples. Actually, this movie, minus the satirical part of the book writing, is actually a better written movie than all of those put together.
I mean, really, I only remember like Rachel getting married that much, but
I love
ultimately,
that one,
like that is exactly, that's what I was trying to say, is that it seems like they had to, well, I don't want to say they had to Trojan horses. I think it can be two things. It can be multiple things. Cord Jefferson saw this, read this book, and he's like, okay, this is something that I'm interested in because of all of these multiple things. But, one element is the literature, the Black writer and culture, and how, he bristles against the, Black culture being depicted in novels. And the other element is the family drama. And then it's incidental that the family drama happens to be with an African-American family versus a white family or a Hispanic family or whatever. But the Black culture part of it is specific, but it's both. And I think that they really do a good job of balancing, that, and it goes back to the tone, and it goes back to, each thing is feeding the other. Like we were talking about, the book, him writing the book is feeding the family drama, and the family drama is helping him to come to reality, to realize. I think the Sterling K. Brown character and the Issa Rae character are both integral in his development and in his working through all of like his whole process. I definitely want to talk about the end of the movie, but those two characters, the differentiation between Issa Rae's book and his book, is something that I didn't see at the beginning, but then as the movie unfolds, we start getting, we start understanding that there is a definitive difference between her character and his character, even though they are both Black writers. It's so easy to flatten that and say like, oh, they're both Black novelists, so therefore they're going to have the same opinions. They're both Black, highly educated novelists, therefore they're going to have the same opinions, or they're going to have the same motivations, or they're going to have the same experiences. No, that's totally different, and they notate that for you as the movie goes on. So I thought that was
it might be a spoiler, and it probably is a spoiler, but when they get to the scene closer to the end of the film where she goes, "Did you read my book?"
Yeah.
And he goes, "No, I've read excerpts and
He's like, "I know what it is."
Yeah. And her look alone goes, "Now wait a second." So you just did what everybody you're pointing the finger at is doing. You're saying that you understood my book by excerpts and the title, because the title is prominent throughout the rest of the
title of his book is definitely prominent.
Oh yeah, which is great. So great. That whole scene is great.
The whiteboard scene, is that what you're talking about?
That's great too.
Oh, him changing.
That's disturbing.
Yes.
But when he's changing it in real time, and the editors or the agents' reactions and stuff, and how easy he manipulates them through exactly what he's trying to point out to them. It's so clever. It's so brilliant. No, I'm saying that he judged a book by its cover. And yet he's accusing the world of judging him by the color of his skin, which is true. Sure. No doubt about it. That's fact, not debatable. That is a truth. But it's shocking to Issa Rae's character that he would do that. And you can tell that she picks up very quickly, and it's a 1 or 2 line dialogue scene until they get to the point where he admits that he didn't read the book, where she's like, she kind of knows almost immediately that he didn't read the book. And also as an audience member, you're keyed in more to her as a writer by her opinion about the whiteboard scene and about what there's no way this can be the number 1 book. Both of them say, have you read this book? It's terrible. And he's like, really? And he's finally found somebody to agree with him. But then
he agrees with her. He agrees with her every single scene that they're together.
So brilliant, because that very first look he gives her, like, you don't like my book? There's a split second where his ego takes over. Just a split second. Yeah. And the subtleties of Jeffrey Wright's performance. There is a scene, and I was trying to remember where it was at. And I just saw the movie yesterday, so I don't know what's wrong with my brain. I can't remember who he's talking to, but he kind of has like an eye-rolling reaction, but he doesn't really roll his eyes. He kind of looks up like he's going to roll his eyes, and then he subtly goes, it's so subtle, but it says volumes. And I don't know what scene they're going to show at the Oscars, but I wish there were little clips of all of the little subtle things he does throughout the whole entire performance, because they are brilliant. And I think only he could have, in that moment with that character, with this film, only he could have done that. So I'm happy for him. And I also want to say this. I know it's kind of like Oscar geeky, but I just wish that it was way more of a competitive game than it really is. We kind of know going into it who to expect, and there are some prizes, absolutely, but I just wish that Cillian Murphy was as neck to neck with Paul Giamatti as he is with Jeffrey Wright. I just wish they were all like a sincere possibility, and they are, because they're all on the ballot. But, you know, there are indicators in this.
There's a wave. Yes. There's a wave.
There's a, you know, anyway, I digress. So the way that did you read my book scene is written, it's so smart, because the audience knows before he knows that she knows that he didn't read her book. Yeah. And the audience knows with her before he really realizes it, that he's doing exactly what he's accusing the rest of the world of doing, meaning the world of his movie, of this movie. And it's so smartly done, because you could very easily put this guy on a pedestal, and he could very easily put himself on a pedestal, and very easily. And I think that's why the scene with the argument with the girlfriend later on is so important, because you see he's just an a-hole. He's just a human being who makes a huge mistake at the wrong time and doesn't even realize it, and defensively walks out. So I'm talking about 3 different things at one time. I'm sorry about that. But the fact that this guy could have very easily been on a pedestal. Yeah, he's right. This is the way we treat people in this world. This is the way literature world treats people. This is the way a movie treats people. They pigeonhole them, blah, 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 blah. But yet he still is human and is flawed and does exactly what he doesn't want people to do. That's brilliant. Yeah. That's just really clever, smart screenwriting. It just is.
And it gets real deep real quick. And then, you know, the other people start coming in, the other writers start coming in. And then ultimately when they do decide to give his book the, you know, the number 1, and it's 3 versus 2. And they're like, okay, well, 3-2 democracy. So, you know, and we think that this should win because Black voices need to be heard. And it's just like,
people in the audience reacted to that.
Yeah, it was hilarious. I mean,
some lady goes, says the white guy in the audience.
But yeah, exactly. But there's Black voices in that room.
Yeah,
and they're not being heard. So yeah, that's so cool. But yes,
clever. I mean, it's really smart.
It gets like super deep, super serious, and then the levity, even if it's that, you know, cynical levity, it just brings it back up. And so that it helps you to keep riding that wave. Like you don't get too low or too high. And then the end is, I mean, I don't know where else you want to go. Oh, let's talk about Sterling K. Brown actually before we get into the end, because his character, he plays the brother of Jeffrey Wright, and his character, he comes out as gay late-ish in his life. It's hard to tell how old Sterling K. Brown is. Number one,
he's ridiculous.
And number two,
put a shirt on.
No
one should look that good.
How old the character
God, he looks like plastic. He's amazing. Like, how much do you have to work out to look like that?
Good probably a lot.
Good for. I mean, the focus and the determination to get those pecs alone. Mind-boggling.
But you're right, though. He's like half wearing a shirt and half not wearing a shirt in this movie, because he's like, guys, I worked hard for this. Like, we gotta,
he takes it off a couple of times.
Yeah.
But I would probably put in my contract to be completely naked the whole entire time if I looked like him.
I was like, fine, I'll meet you halfway. I'll wear a shirt sometimes.
Put the door in front of that part. I'm not putting nothing on. Yeah.
But
it's a beach house, so it's appropriate on some level.
True. That's true.
The shirt's off and on.
But yeah, I mean, his character, playing that character and then having to deal with, that, and then losing their father, and then the situation they're going through with their mother, and then just his, he's obviously going through a lot in his personal life with, divorcing his wife and all that stuff. I mean, there's just a lot going on there. So that character, to me, initially, I was kind of like, oh, this is like, I felt like this was a foil, but not an integral part of the film early on. I was like, oh, this is just the tacked on character. This is the extra character. But it's not, obviously. Like, as the film goes on, we're able to see the parallels between him and Monk, the main character. So like that, it's integral to the film. Like, without that character, Monk doesn't have the revelations that he has, and he isn't able to understand like how he was affected, and how his and how, I guess, living your truth is important, because that's what his brother's going through at this moment, is trying to live his truth and trying to be his authentic self. And it's like, you need to be your authentic self, whatever that is. So that's the part that kind of got me, where it was like, and it's the scene at the party, the wedding, I guess, that you really get that payoff. And it's like, oh, this character needed to be here the whole time. And there's multiple scenes. I could see that being the kind of like Oscar scene or whatever. Maybe not the scene that they would play at the Oscars, but like this is, it's not a one-note performance, and it's also a really important character. So yeah,
that's interesting. It answers a few of my questions I have about that character. And first, let me state, Sterling K. Brown is an Academy Award nominee for a reason. Only him, only in this film, only like what he does. I wish they'd show the scene where they're putting the suitcases in the car and go get mom. And he's like, what is wrong with you? Like, and he's like, you think that's obnoxious? That's hilarious. He's off camera during that, but only him, only in that moment could he have made that choice. Only that actor. And I am, I'm a big This Is Us fan, and I'm a big Randall fan. That's the character he played on This Is Us. And I like him a lot. The thing I have to say is, and I don't want to at all put any kind of marking on the positivity that I had from this film, and I was lit up. I was so happy this movie is being recognized. I'm so happy people are going to see it. It's one of the best of the year. It's probably going to be in my top 10. But I do have to say this, and it was something that struck me in the movie, not afterwards, and not thinking about it later, or even before, knowing some of the things I knew about his character. You spend this whole entire movie subverting what the audience thinks a black family is, or what a black writer is, or what we think a hip hop artist is, or a musician is, or what we think an actor in a movie should be playing. And, the great scene with Keith David as he's writing the script, that's a great scene. And the way that those actors play that scene is brilliant, because the eye patch guy, so I don't know his name, the way he pauses.
The switching that they do, the kind of like the focus switching, like they're focusing on each other and then they're boom.
Right. But they never look at him.
Yeah.
They always look kind of like they're not supposed to look at him, because they're not real. They're only real in his imagination. Such a great choice. And I'm sure that's the director and screenwriter as much as the actors. And those two actors handle it so well, because you can tell they're parodying what they're supposed to be doing. But at the same time, they're really showing us what the last 30 some odd years of Black people in film has been, if not longer than that. Yeah. So it's an important distinction. And he subverts all of those ideas and gives us all a brand new idea on some level of what this family really looks like. And then he writes the gay character almost as stereotypically as you could possibly write him. From my point of view, why? Okay, so you answered the question, what's the relevance of the character in the movie? Because I almost thought to myself, you could take that character out of the movie and you could still have Jeffrey Wright through the girlfriend, through the sister, through the mother, through whatever things they are. The other writer, the other Black woman writer, Issa Rae's character, you could have that moment without it being the gay brother. Okay. Mm-hmm. And the fact that he had an affair doesn't necessarily mean he had to have an affair with a man. Like, why did the character have to be gay? Like, what was the purpose behind that? Before you answer, or before, sorry to sound condescending, but before you prove me wrong.
No,
I'm fine with that, because sometimes we help answer each other's questions, and I like that. And I'm not trying to sound defensive. I'm just trying to say, think about it. It's a middle-aged guy who's finally come out of the closet. He got caught in bed with a man. His family has disowned him, and he specifically says his kids hate him. Okay. She's financially put him in a place where a plastic surgeon can't help his mother. Okay. Then you see him. Now, Sterling K. Brown is genius at the quips, but they are quips. And that is traditionally the gay character's role, is to quip something funny to make the world laugh at something. So you see the truth behind it. It happens a lot.
Okay.
They've done a whole documentary.
Are you talking about like the In Living Color, like Z Snap thing? Or
no,
what?
No, I'm talking about always having the smart alecky way of answering the serious situation.
People do that at my work all the time, and
absolutely. But if you're lining up tropes and you're lining up stereotypical character traits, that is a stereotypical character trait of a gay person in a film. It just is. It doesn't necessarily mean that the gay character has to be quippy, and it doesn't mean the quippy character has to be gay. It's just traditionally in film, that's what we see. Not a problem.
Yeah.
Doesn't hurt my feelings. Doesn't make me take it defensively or make it personal. I don't feel bad. I'm quippy myself. And shut up. Be quiet. Do not speak. Shh, hush. So then he says he's doing one thing and then he does another, and he ends up at the beach house. And what's the first thing you see when they walk into the kitchen?
Two guys in their Speedos or whatever, like cooking.
One being very stereotypical, okay, and super sweet people. And then what's the next thing you see Sterling K. Brown do? When he's like, I didn't leave. I didn't
cleaning up the cocaine.
Right.
Yeah.
So liar about his sexuality, finally comes out but gets caught first. Kids hate him. Financially ruined, quippy, two gay stereotypical characters as friends in Speedos, looking great, by the way, no doubt about it. They looked hot, good for them. Then drugs. Then the coming out story. it's just been done over and over again. And it completely works in this film. I'm not bashing on the film for it. I'm just saying that you spend all of this time saying, hey, world, look, this is what you've put on us. And then you use everything that's been on film 1,000 times before to write the gay character.
Yeah.
And I know that it's for a purpose, but here's my last point of contention with this character, who I think is brilliant, and I loved every second of him on film. But why does the gay guy or the gay person always have to have a sad coming out story where he hasn't told his parents and he wishes he had and blah, blah, blah? That's just not true all the way down the line. You know, It wasn't true for me. You know, I never came out to my parents, but I don't feel bad about that. I don't feel less of a person. Now, there is a thing in gay culture where some people feel that you're not fully out unless you came out to your parents. And I understand the necessity and need to come out to who you choose to come out to at your time and your place and your pace. I get it. And I get why that character would have that scene. But if you think about it, all of those things have been done before. There's nothing uniquely original about that character in the writing. So I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm saying that it did make me think when he's approaching him at the wedding. I thought, I bet you this is the coming out scene. This is the scene where he's going to say he regrets not coming out to his dad. And I instantaneously knew it and could feel it. And maybe that's just really great screenwriting and a really great movie, allowing me to let my imagination flow with it and kind of like be connected to these characters that I know what they're going to say next. That's actually a compliment to the film. But if you do think about it, it is straight down the line what we've seen many times before.
It's like a color by numbers of gay character, is what you're saying.
That's a little
reductive.
Yeah. I was going to say reductive. Yeah. That's a little simplification because it's a complex character. But if you think about it, okay, look at it this way. He could have had an affair with a woman. Didn't have to be his coming out.
Sure.
His family could have been in conflicts. His kids could have hated him because he slept with a woman, had an affair. His wife could have taken his money or put him in a financial situation where he couldn't help his mother because he had an affair. He could just be the younger, messed up brother. That's been written 1,000 times before.
Yeah.
I'm not exactly sure why the character had to be gay.
I'm going to come at this from a narrative standpoint and say that, is there a differentiation between someone who cheated on his wife with another woman and someone who has been forced into reckoning with his choices up to that point of getting caught with a man and how he wants to live the rest of his life? So I think that like there's a difference between those two instances. A man being caught cheating on his wife with another woman because he's, just bored with his wife or whatever. She doesn't do his laundry right or whatever it is. And a man who has probably been having sex with other men for a while and finally got caught by his wife, who's been living the lie for all of those, whatever years, months, whatever, and is forced into reckoning with, his life. And where he's at in that process, he's obviously not at a stable spot in that process throughout this whole movie, because he's doing drugs and he's hanging out with random dudes and bouncing from place to place, saying he's going to be here, going there, having money problems, all this stuff. He is a work in progress, just like the Jeffrey Wright character is a work in progress. It's just, it seems like the monk character doesn't know he's a work in progress until close to the end of the movie. And maybe that's the kind of like, that scene is like, hey, you may think you are projecting this thing to the world, but you need to be safe in what you are, and then projecting that out into the world, and then let the world deal with it. because that's what that's what the Sterling K. Brown character is trying to go through. Not being successful at it, obviously, but because he hasn't, whatever it is, if he wants to reconcile with his children, he hasn't tried to do that. If he wants to, if he wants to have a stable professional life, he hasn't done that. All of these things, he's not in a good place, but that doesn't mean that his character can't inform the monk character in a way, or at least expose the monk character to a possibility different than what he feels like he's in.
But he never has that moment, though. If he says to him, it woke me up. It woke me up. I had an affair, got caught with a man, and it woke me up to, my crap is not together. My life is not put together. I'm trying to get it together. I mean, it explains maybe a little too much, but there's nothing in there that connects what you got from it to the actual film that I saw. And I wish I had seen that, because I'm still kind of grappling with, so you're saying that when Sterling K. Brown tells him how he felt like he should have come out to his dad, do you think he knew, blah, 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 blah. You're saying that Sterling K. Brown is trying to come closer to being living a genuine life and living who he's supposed to be. And that kind of wakes Jeffrey Wright up to wanting the same kind of thing. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Or at least maybe opening him up to the possibility of, he's been projecting this, like, it seems like he's felt like his whole career, his whole writing career or professional career, he's felt like he's had to go uphill the whole time and prove that he can be just as an intellectual as a white writer, or whatever. He can go against the trend of what the perceptions of black males are. But what he needs to do is he needs to, and I think that it seems like what the Sterling K. Brown character is saying is he needs to just figure out who he is, whether it is someone who, is whatever that, the thing that he says he's against, or the thing that if he's an intellectual, be an intellectual and be proud of it, but don't feel like you're having to fight against being an intellectual. Just be that thing that is a black man, and everybody else will have to deal with it. Whether they like what you write or don't like what you write or whatever, don't feel like you have to fight against who you are. Instead of trying to repel what you feel other people are putting on you, you emanate your genuine self, and then they'll deal with it or not.
Okay. Well, two things. The next time I watch the film, I'll watch it from that point of view, and maybe it's there, and I just am a little too defensive to the stereotypical tropes, and maybe that's partially true. But now that I pointed them out, you got to admit they're pretty much it's par for the course.
Yeah,
when it comes to a gay guy in a movie, it's just that's why I think the Last of Us resonated so much with people, the Nick Offerman character, mm-hmm. and the Murray Bartlett character. I don't know. Did you see it? Did you see the? Uh-huh. Okay. I think that's why that resonated so much with people, because that was about love and survival. Yeah. And finding true love. And Nick Offerman says to him, I was never afraid before you came around. Now I'm afraid because I have something at stake. I have something to lose. That's a universal story. It doesn't matter that it's two men. And Nick Offerman won the Emmy, by the way. Deservedly so.
Yeah, I saw his acceptance speech. So. Yeah, it was pretty fun.
And so it's one of those things that I think stuck out to me because it's there, and not in a defensive, this is a bad thing kind of way. Just, this writer has been so smart. Yeah. I'm wondering what could have, but I get what you're saying. I get why you're saying you think it's the way that it is. So his statement is, I never came out to Dad.
Yeah.
As
that
soon
he's
as
sad about that, right? Didn't he
he's
say
sad
like,
about
yeah,
that.
uh-huh.
Yeah, he's sad about that because he never got to know who he really was.
Yes.
And that bodes well for what you're saying about Jeffrey Wright as not being who he really is and not caring what other people say. In my opinion, and I'm not trying to rewrite anything, I'm just saying it would have, if the character said, I didn't come up to dad and I never wanted to, and I didn't really care about that because I know who I am. That's a little different than what we normally hear. Not relevant to this character in this movie, but it would have been refreshing to actually hear that versus what we did. Anyway, it's way too long on an observation, not a criticism.
Yeah.
You know, I would want to spark a conversation with this question, not make people feel defensive. And in particular, anybody who worked on this film to feel defensive. I would want people to go, oh, okay, I don't think we saw it that way. Let me hear what you're saying. Yeah. That's what I think we do when we're talking about movies. We're not talking about mansplaining something. We're not talking about. Yeah. And by the way, side note, you know what I find interesting? And this is an observation, not a criticism. And I'm going to stick to that. We were more uncomfortable with talking about Barbie. I'm sorry. You were more uncomfortable with talking about Barbie, and you stated that there are two men talking about Barbie. And I went, well, yeah, but that's not really what the movie's about. The movie's about I am me and you are you, blah, 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 blah. Then we are about two white guys talking about this subject. And I think that's some kind of evolution, maybe not just for the world, but maybe for us. And so I found that interesting. See, these thoughts go through my mind, and this is why I don't take notes, because I try not to remember these thoughts because I don't know if they're relevant to anything that we just talked about. But, you know, something to think about, just an observation.
Well, let's talk about the end because the end is, you go through a lot, and I do have a couple questions about the end too. But the fact that Cord Jefferson utilizes all of the tools of a movie to end his movie. Yeah. And it's very meta by the end, and we get
adaptation.
Yes, we get that like movie within a movie, all of that stuff. I mean, it's you can keep track of it. It's not difficult, but at the same time, you're kind of like, okay, where did we stop being in the real movie and where are we in the new movie or the movie within a movie? But I thought that it was the best movies do that, you know, very deftly, and this one is one of those where we go through each of those iterations and you get the kind of like, you know, remember Clue, the movie Clue, where it had like 3 different endings in the theater and all that stuff. So you kind of get all of the different endings. So it's, in some ways you could say it's a cop out where it's like, oh, he got all of the endings, but ultimately he does settle on one ending. And it was he gets shot by the cops and all that stuff, right? Yeah.
That's the ending to the movie.
That's the ending to the movie that he's going to make with Adam Brody, right?
Right.
Yes. And he's okay with it because he goes and gets in the really cool 2-seater Mercedes convertible and heads off the lot. But before he does that, he looks over at a guy who's playing, what is it? A Civil War, like a slave or something?
He's fill in the blanks.
He's dressed in
12 Years a Slave, Roots, all of them.
Yeah. And they just kind of give each other the nod, you know, the like, just out here making a buck, you know? And so how did that hit you, the end of the movie?
Well, I think it's have your cake and eat it too. And I'm fine with that. I think that he is, because, you know, we've talked about this many times. Radio indicted TV, TV indicted DVDs, DVDs indicted films, films indicted TV. They're all pointing their fingers at each other going, this film industry is corrupt. This TV industry is corrupt. This is that, blah, 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 blah. And then in the end, they end up doing whatever it is marketable and makes the most money. The Player, the Tim Robbins film, the Robert Altman film, The Player. I mean, have you seen that movie? Oh, yeah. Remember what the screenwriter says in the beginning of the film? No stars, no this, no that. I need this. And it opens with these umbrellas and rain.
It's
and then
an amazing long shot. And it's a long shot.
Oh, which is so great.
It is really good.
And then it ends up being Bruce Willis and Julia Roberts, are the 2 huge stars at the end. And his answer is to the girl who is now, or the woman who is now disillusioned by everything Tim Robbins does, says, I thought this. And he goes, F it. It didn't test well. The test audience didn't buy that, or whatever it may be. Oh, the ending. They wanted him to die, the main character to die, I think. Thank God, because I don't feel bad about spoiling the player for everybody. But he's like, the test marketing audiences hated it. So F it. And, and in a way, that's what that industry is like. So he has succumbed to the tropes of movie making by having the police, which is a statement in itself.
Sure.
Shooting an unarmed black man, or an armed black man who they think has something that he doesn't have.
He's
it's
got
obviously
an award.
a crystal statue, and they go, it's a gun. He's got a gun. I mean,
it's a shiny, clear thing. It must be a gun. I know.
Which is satirical and ironic and real. And so it's kind of sad. I was actually saddened by that, because it's a great way of putting that in people's faces, though. It's a really great way of subverting every excuse people come up with for why that happens in real life. Well, it looked like this, or he was wearing a hoodie, or whatever it may be. And I'm not making light of any of that by any means. So I liked that idea. I liked that he succumbed to the Hollywood ending, but it made a statement about the real world. And the thing that I love the most about the ending is, first of all, his girlfriend's name is Erica Alexander.
Yeah.
She's superb. She's a light.
She's great.
Like,
I remembered her from, she was in like Living Single, like that show. Like I used to watch
is that her?
Yeah,
I was
that's her.
Where,
yeah, she
that's
was in
her.
With Queen Latifah. Like
yes, I remember that show. I remember she's kind of like the she's not as character out as the rest of them are.
Yeah.
She's sort of like the straight guy, if you will. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know exactly who you're talking about. I was wondering why I recognized her, but I felt like, I don't know, I felt comforted by her and her presence in the movie. And then, you know what? That's it. She never calls him back, and that's it. Yeah. They never wrap that up. They never come back to it. They never say, he says she's not calling me back in real life. The real life.
Not in the movie within a movie, they all, they get through
She's at the award show. She shows up, but that's all in the movie, inside the movie.
But it's not.
When he's driving away, that's never resolved.
Yeah.
Well,
he's back in LA, and she's over in New York.
You were Boston. You were not nice to me. Get out. She says, get out of my house. No, I need you to leave. And that's it. There's no resolution there, because there doesn't need to be, because he gets what he deserves. Well, he made a mistake as a human being, and she cut him off because she doesn't want that kind of behavior in her life. And they stuck to that. They didn't try to find a romantic ending with them. They didn't try to find a romantic resolution with them. She goes, no, not my life. Get out of my house. And that's where it lies. And I like that, because that's real life. That's true to how people are. And it's wonderful to see a female of color stand up to for herself and say, no, get out. No, I'm serious. Get out. And that's it. And she says it with strength and dignity. And she says, we're not having a conversation about this. Get out. And I love that. I love that they left her standing strong and resolved, and did not come up with an ending to make us feel better about him being a jerk to her.
Yeah.
Way worse than a jerk, but there are selective words that I cannot use. So I was glad for that. As for the driving off the lot, I mean, how many millions of movies have we seen like that? So why not?
Well,
why not with this character, who is what we don't normally see as this character? Why doesn't he do a stereotypical thing at the end, or a traditional thing, whatever you want to call it? An obvious thing.
Yeah. And I think that's just, he's okay. It seems like he's come to terms with his, with the opportunity that he has, and he's going to take advantage of that opportunity. And he seems comfortable with that. And
with $4 million in his pocket.
Yeah. And is that going to define him, or is he going to be able to, whatever it is. He's number one, going to be able to take care of his mother. Number two, he's going to be able to have the flexibility to write whatever he wants, or, open up that to a screenwriting career or whatever. Like, he has a path forward. And so, he's made that decision, and he's moved on. So, I mean, he's living in the world instead of living outside of it. It's like he's jumped into the double dutch instead of stayed out of it and just pointed fingers and saying, like, no, that's wrong. So
the only thing that's a tad bit confusing to me is, when does that transition happen? So has he always been writing a movie inside of a movie inside? Did he always write himself in the movie? Like, all of a sudden when they're filming the movie at the end and he goes to accept the award and reveals that he is who he is, which happens in 1,000 movies.
Yeah.
Mrs. Doubtfire.
I am Iron Man.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Right. Exactly. Which makes it brilliant that they chose to emulate that or imitate that, or just do it because it's been done a million times before. So why not?
Yeah.
So they can do it. We can too. But when does that happen? Like, does that happen in the writing of the script? Like, does Adam Brody's character at the end of the movie know that Jeffrey Wright is really Monk, or is he, what's his name? Stag
R-Lee. Yeah.
That's great. Like when does that happen? It doesn't matter per se, but I was a little like, when did that happen?
He thinks that he is Stag R-Lee the whole time, but then the reveal. Well, he did say that. Like,
so it's Stag R-Lee who's accepting the award when the cops bust in.
Yes, correct.
Okay,
and that's why the cops bust in, because they're supposedly following him,
right?
Or seeing if Stag R-Lee will show up to accept his award. Well, I have one more thing to say. I need Jeffrey Wright's Taylor, because like he's got a little bit of a gut type thing. Not even a gut. Like, he's just, he's not slim and trim, but like everything that guy wears in this movie is like perfectly tailored. And I'm like, dude, looks great. So I don't know. I mean, shoot, they're doing him a solid by the nicely cut shirts. So I was like, man, I got to give me one of them.
Have you ever had anything made for yourself?
No,
It's weird. It's weird.
Oh, you mean like the process, or once you have it? Once you have it, it's
how
probably,
well it fits you.
See, that's what I'm talking about.
So weird how you realize how much something doesn't fit you.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm an average size guy and always have been to a degree. So I don't really have much of an issue with it, other than being average size everything. So it's never in stock. But I love the joke in the beginning of the film too, when he's talking about, I put on some weight. His sister's like, no, you look great. And his mother, first thing out of the bat, you look fat.
Yeah.
And mothers, gotta love them.
Well, Leslie Elgins, she says,
she's fantastic too.
And she does say what she thinks.
I love it.
That no filter. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. No, she did a great job too. All right. Okay. You can check us out on the web at actorandengineer.com. You can go to facebook.com/actorandengineer, and you can find us on YouTube. Just search for the Actor and the Engineer podcast, and we'll see you next time.